The film begins by showing a conglomerate family who are hosting a birthday party attended by their relatives. Additionally, they also invited a cowboy guest along with his child to entertain the guests. During the event, news flashes on one of the television stations reporting on the issue of nuclear war, which has been ongoing for the past 10 years. But they consider the news just regular chatter. However, the birthday party that should have been lively suddenly disperses when a nuclear bomb explodes right in the city of Los Angeles, which causing panic among everyone, and some people who had prepared for the possibility of a nuclear war immediately entering the bunker. Sometime later, 219 years later, we see a cheerful and very active young woman named Lucy, who is the daughter of the leader of Bunker 33. Currently, there are hundreds of bunkers around the world, and each bunker has hundreds of inhabitants, all of them working and having their own responsibilities. They also have a governing council that regulates all the rules of life in that place. Shortly after, Lucy asks the three councils to organize a marriage for her with someone from another bunker because most people within one bunker are still related by blood. After considering qualifications, Lucy's wedding day arrives. Her father, who is the supervisor, and several residents of Bunker 33 gather to get ready for the wedding. Shortly after, Lucy and her father, along with several others, meet the supervisor of Bunker 32 named Moldever. Bunker 32 is their neighboring bunker, and it's where Lucy's potential husband comes from. At first, the wedding went smoothly like any other wedding, and everyone was happy about it. Lucy's father also wished for Lucy's marriage to bring about good children who would help society later on. However, everything changed when Lucy's sibling, Norm, realized that they were not original inhabitants of Bunker 32 but rather raiders from the surface. Lucy, who realized this too late, attempted to flee before the raiders could hurt her. Even though Lucy was stabbed in the stomach, she struggled hard to escape. Eventually, Lucy succeeded in sounding the alarm and defeating the raiders, thanks to the combat training she had received over time. After successfully escaping, Lucy saw several dead residents of the bunker who had been killed by the raiders. Lucy quickly grabbed a steam pack, which was a first aid kit, and a tranquilizer gun to help eliminate the raiders attacking the place. Not stopping there, the residents of Bunker 33 faced another problem when Moldever managed to take several residents of Bunker 33 hostage with a bomb ready to explode. It turns out, Moldever was not an original inhabitant of Bunker 32, but rather a leader of the Raider faction who had previously eliminated everyone in Bunker 32. At that moment, Moldever gave Lucy's father an ultimatum to choose between the prisoners or Lucy. With no other choice, Lucy's father ultimately had to choose Lucy and make himself a prisoner to be taken to the surface. Shortly after the incident that resulted in the deaths of some residents of Bunker 33, Lucy briefly sought permission from the councils to go to the surface and search for his father. But Betty, one of the councils who was also a former supervisor of Bunker 33 before Lucy's father, immediately disagreed with Lucy's statement. Betty revealed that their top priority at the moment was to safeguard the bunker from the surface world, so Lucy eventually intended to sneak out with the help of Norm and his cousin. And for the first time, Lucy finally saw the surface world, now barren due to nuclear radiation. On the other hand, we see a young soldier named Maximus. He is a member of the Brotherhood of Steel and has signed up as a potential guard for Knight Titus, where a knight will have the privilege of wearing the famous T-60 armor, which is specifically designed to clean the Earth's surface from mutant threats. When Maximus sees the T-60 armor displayed, he immediately remembers meeting a Knight Titus during the war that destroyed his home. Since that time, Maximus has dreamed of joining them. At first, he felt disappointed when his fellow soldier, who was a bit unruly, was chosen instead. But fate stepped in when that comrade injured his leg, resulting in Maximus being selected as the replacement guard for the Knight. After that, Maximus serves as a guard for one of the Knight Titus. Shortly after, Maximus and others are tasked with finding Professor Quintus along with his dog. Dr. Quintus has escaped from a research facility called the Enclave and carrying an object that could potentially harm humanity. On the other hand, 3 raiders are shown receiving orders from their boss to dig up the grave of a ghoul. After successfully resurrecting the individual, they discover that their boss is looking for Dr. Quintus, similar to the one currently sought by the Knight Titus. The resurrected ghoul turns out to be a famous actor and cowboy named Cooper. He was the same person invited to the birthday party at the beginning of the series. At that moment, The three raiders rudely ask for his help, so Cooper easily dispatches them. This shows that Cooper is not just an ordinary actor, but also skilled in combat. Returning to Lucy, who is now outside after spending her entire life inside the bunker. The outside world is very strange to her, and Lucy herself doesn't know where to start looking for her father. As night falls, Lucy decides to spend the night in an empty house, where she accidentally encounters a man and his dog, who turns out to be Dr. Quintus, who is on the run. Realizing that Lucy is not from the surface, Dr. Quintus advises Lucy to be more careful because the level of radiation that has engulfed the Earth for hundreds of years has caused many creatures to mutate into more vicious forms in order to survive. The next day, Maximus starts his mission to guard Knight Titus in search of their fugitive. After following some clues, they finally arrive at a cave. Unfortunately, they only find a mutant bear there, which blindly attacks Knight Titus, causing the pilot to suffer severe injuries. Surprisingly, the bear focuses solely on the knight, giving Maximus the chance to shoot and kill it. However, instead of being grateful for saving him, the knight's pilot scolds Maximus, accusing him of causing the severe injury. Maximus is hurt by these words and decides to let the pilot suffer, refusing to give him the steam pack until the pilot eventually dies. After that incident, Maximus, who has no experience, decides to take over the T-60 armor he has always dreamed of and continue his mission to find Dr. Quintus. At that moment, Maximus realizes that if he returns with failure, he will surely receive the death penalty from his superiors. On the other hand, Lucy finally arrived at a city center in Westaland, where she visits a shop to inquire about the person who kidnapped her father. Initially, the shop owner seems indifferent to Lucy and tends to underestimate her, but when she mentions Moldever, the old woman immediately becomes serious and asks Lucy to leave the place immediately. At the same time, Dr. Quintus appears and once again advises Lucy to return home. Not only that, Dr. Quintus also reveals everything he knows about the contents of Bunker 33, where Lucy comes from, and all the propaganda within the bunker. This confirms that Dr. Quintus indeed knows a lot and assesses that Lucy wouldn't be able to survive on the surface. But before Dr. Quintus could explain more, Cooper emerges to hunt down Dr. Quintus. On the other hand, the shop owner, who is actually hired by Moldever to safely escort Dr. Quintus out of the city, doesn't stay idle and immediately offers a reward to anyone who manages to eliminate Cooper. Shortly after, a shootout between Cooper and everyone there ensues. Even though outnumbered and in a very disadvantageous position, Cooper manages to overpower them. Even after receiving several shots, it seems to have no effect on Cooper. At that moment, Lucy, with her innocent attitude of bunker dwellers who have never interacted with the real world, asks Cooper to surrender while aiming a tranquilizer gun at him. But Cooper is a ghoul, so Lucy's weapon has no effect on him at all. Luckily, Maximus in the T-60 armor also arrives there upon hearing the commotion and takes over the fight, giving Lucy and Dr. Quintus a chance to escape from there. Unfortunately, Maximus doesn't have much experience in fighting either. Despite using incredibly strong armor, Cooper still beats him, even though he was trapped at the beginning of the fight. On the other hand, the shop owner quickly provides Lucy with a set of coordinates and urges her to immediately escort Dr. Quintus to that location. The woman reveals that Moldever is the one who employed her, and Lucy would have a chance to meet Moldever and her father if she escort Dr. Quintus to the provided location. Sometime later, Lucy and Dr. Quintus reach the desert plains. However, Dr. Quintus, who is already dying from his wounds, realizes that he won't make it to Moldever's location alive. Therefore, Dr. Quintus decides to swallow a cyanide pill and asks Lucy to decapitate him because what Moldever needs is an object implanted in his neck. After that, Dr. Quintus reveals that he is actually a scientist from the Enclave, a post-nuclear war shadow government organization that seeks to control the American mainland by monopolizing all resources. This organization oversees the Brotherhood of Steel faction with its combat strength, as well as the Vault-Tec Corporation, which builds hundreds of bunkers with various research projects. However, Dr. Quintus decides to defect to the Republic faction led by Moldever after successfully creating cold nuclear fusion that capable of supplying electricity nationwide and rebuilding civilization. His creation would clearly threaten the existence of the Enclave organization, and for that reason Dr. Quintus is hunted down. In the end, Dr. Quintus flees and desperately tries to surrender the nuclear fusion he implanted in his neck to Moldever. After hearing Dr. Quintus's explanation in his final moments, Lucy has no choice but to comply with his request and continue the journey to the coordinates given to her earlier. The scene then shifts back to 200 years before the nuclear war occurred. At that time, Cooper was still a normal human before being exposed to nuclear radiation that left his face disfigured. At that moment, Cooper is seen enjoying his life as an actor in a film. Additionally, Cooper is a responsible, hard-working man that willing to do any job to support his family financially. Apart from being a film actor, Cooper also accepts advertising offers from Vault-Tec, a giant private company that designs and implements the bunker network now known as the Vault. Returning to the present, Cooper, who is now over 200 years old, appears shocked to find Dr. Quintus's body with his head missing, as his head had been taken by Lucy according to his own request. Upon learning this, Cooper quickly rushes to track down Lucy by utilizing Dr. Quintus's dog. But before that, Cooper had taken a ghoul antidote to keep himself sane. If he were late in taking the medicine, Cooper would lose consciousness and become savage. On the other hand, Lucy finally arrives at a submerged city after following the coordinates while carrying Dr. Quintus's head. As Lucy approaches the water, suddenly a salamander monster appears and steals Dr. Quintus's head. Before dealing with that problem, another issue arises where Cooper, who had been tracking Dr. Quintus, finally finds Lucy and immediately demands the item he's searching for. However, the item has been stolen by the salamander monster, so Cooper ties up Lucy and throws her into the water as bait. Shortly after, the monster emerges from the water, nearly devouring Lucy as bait. Fortunately, Lucy manages to survive, as Dr. Quintus's dog bites the monster, causing it to retreat back into the water. However, due to the recent incident, Cooper's ghoul antidote breaks. Since the antidote is crucial to Cooper, he decides to take Lucy to where he usually purchases the medicine first. On the other hand, inside Bunker 33, Norm is shown being judged by the council for his actions in helping Lucy escape from the bunker. Although it was Lucy's idea, Betty, as a council member, still blames Norm's decision to assist in opening the bunker exit, as it could potentially endanger them as the remnants of civilization on Earth. Fortunately, the bunker residents are unharmed, and for his mistake, Norm is sentenced to be the food escort for the prisoners who were previously sedated by tranquilizers. Meanwhile, Maximus is busy with his damaged T-60 armor after his fight against Cooper. Shortly after, Maximus receives a call from headquarters asking about the condition of the owner of the armor. However, the previous owner has been killed by a mutant bear attack, so Maximus took over the role and claims to be a Knight Titus. At that moment, Maximus cleverly twists the facts, suggesting that the deceased was killed by a bear. Without suspicion, the headquarters team mentions they will send someone to replace Maximus as their new guard. Not long after, Maximus returns to the nearest market to fix one of the components of his damaged armor. However, upon returning to install the component, Maximus sees several bandits intending to loot the armor, so he reluctantly has to fight them. In the end, Maximus has to fight 4 people at once, so it's not an easy battle for him as he lacks fighting experience. Fortunately, Maximus manages to seize the moment when in a tight spot, taking control of the armor and using the robot arm to crush one of the bandits' heads, causing the other bandits to become fearful. At the same time, the man previously assigned by headquarters finally arrives at Maximus's coordinates to become the new guard of Knight Titus. Coincidentally, this man is someone who used to bully Maximus when he was still in the military camp. Upon seeing the man, Maximus immediately enters the armor and acts as if everything is going smoothly. Shortly after, the guard delivers a message from headquarters, stating that there are others Knight that also targeting Dr. Quintus. So Knight Titus is ordered to eliminate anyone who tries to obstruct them from finding Dr. Quintus. After that, they continue their journey to find Dr. Quintus using the device brought by the guard. Sometime later, they eventually reach the lake previously visited by Cooper and Lucy, where the lake is inhabited by a salamander monster. As Maximus and the guard begin to enter the water, the monster reappears and immediately devours the guard. Luckily, he survives after Maximus holds the monster's mouth shut. This makes the monster spit out everything it had eaten, including Dr. Quintus's head. Meanwhile, Cooper decides to take Lucy to a place to exchange her for medicines, as Cooper wouldn't be able to survive without them. Upon entering, Lucy is greeted by Mr. Handy, a robot employed by the two owners of the place, who immediately heals her wounds. However, it turns out the place is an organ trading location. Luckily, when her organs were about to be extracted, Lucy manages to free herself and thwart the robot's actions by electrocuting it using a pacemaker device, causing the robot to malfunction. After successfully disabling Mr. Handy, Lucy immediately exits the operating room and holds her gun at the two men. Lucy then demands them to release the people they were holding captive, including several ghouls present there. At that moment, the two men told Lucy not to let the ghouls out. But Lucy, who is innocent and doesn't know much about the world above, insists on opening all the cages. In the end, the ghouls who had lost consciousness attack the three of them. But Lucy manages to evade their attacks, while the two owners of the place end up getting killed, although they manage to take down some of the rampaging ghouls. After that, Lucy successfully escapes from the place, and to show her sincerity, she takes some medicines to give to Cooper before leaving him there. Back in Bunker 33, where Norm works as a food delivery person for the prisoners detained there. He still seems angry with them and briefly talks to them, making fun of their situation. He says they can't do anything now and have to stay locked up until the people in the bunker decide what to do with them, following what they did to the inhabitants of Bunker 32. However, one of the prisoners mentions that, although they are indeed criminals, they have no knowledge of what really happened to the inhabitants of Bunker 32. After hearing that, Norm became curious and immediately checked the computer system to view the conversation history of Bunker 32, which strangely was already locked. This further aroused Norm's suspicion, prompting him to immediately invite his cousin to revisit Bunker 32 and search for anything that could serve as a clue. Upon arriving at the Bunker 32, the first thing they found was a dried-up cornfield, indicating that the place had been neglected for a long time, making it unlikely that the recent attack by the raiders had caused it, as it had just happened yesterday. As they ventured deeper into the place, they discovered more and more strange evidence, such as a bracelet belonging to one of the corpses whose last active time was 2 years ago. Additionally, there were also many writings on the walls indicating a rebellion against the bunker management for hiding something. Curious, Norm then checked the computer there to view the records of the bunker door openings, where Norm finally discovered that the door of Bunker 32 was actually not opened from the inside but from the outside. But it needed a special bracelet from Vault-Tec. What's even more surprising is that the device detected to have been used to open the door belonged to Norm's mother. However, according to Betty's confession, Norm's mother had long passed away, and Betty herself had helped Norm's father bury her body. Worried that their actions would be discovered by Betty, they decided to immediately return to Bunker 33 and act as if nothing had happened. On the other hand, the inhabitants of Bunker 33 also behaved as if everything was fine. They even held an election to find a replacement supervisor for Lucy's father. At that moment, Betty was elected based on the highest number of votes, as Betty had previous experience as a supervisor. However, Norm felt something was off again because whenever there was a leadership election, it was always people from Bunker 31 who were transferred to Bunker 33 who were chosen, even though there were hundreds of bunkers scattered throughout America that protect their inhabitants from radioactive waves and radiation, including Bunkers 31, 32, and 33 that are interconnected, but with restricted doors and communication limited only to supervisors. Additionally, they often exchange residents between these bunkers through marriages or other means. Strangely, every elected supervisor comes from Bunker 31, so it seems like only the inhabitants of Bunkers 31 that talk to each other and know what's happening in these three bunkers. Shortly after Betty was elected as the new chief supervisor of Bunker 33, she proposed to conduct another migration to maximize their bunker. But this time it was slightly different, where half of Bunker 33's population would be moved to Bunker 32 to revive the place. Strangely, after Norm visited Bunker 32, the place appeared normal, where the corpses and signs of previous riots that Norm had seen before had vanished without a trace. On the other hand, Maximus, who was chatting with his guard, looked happy after they successfully obtained Dr. Quintus's head. They then intended to return to headquarters to hand over their found. But before leaving, Maximus, who didn't want his disguise to be uncovered by the headquarters, quickly removed his mask. He hoped the guard would agree to work together to match their stories and keep the true Knight Titus's death hidden. When the guard saw Maximus inside the armor, He was surprised and refused to help Maximus. This led Maximus to immediately get rid of the guard. Unfortunately, Maximus ended up trapped in the T-60 armor after the guard removed the fusion core from the armor, before leaving Maximus there with Dr. Quintus's head. The next day, Maximus, feeling stiff and not knowing what to do, could only resign himself when several mutant cockroaches surrounded him. Luckily, Lucy appeared and helped Maximus exterminate the cockroaches, freeing Maximus from the T-60 armor in the process. At that moment, it was their second meeting and Maximus introduced himself to Lucy without hesitation as Knight Titus. Maximus was surprised when Lucy showed detailed knowledge about the T-60 power armor he wore and mentioned that she came from a bunker. Because, according to military camp teachings, underground bunkers were only occupied by monsters. After that, Maximus told Lucy that he intended to go search for his guard, who had stolen Dr. Quintus's head belonging to the Brotherhood of Steel. Upon hearing this, Lucy immediately had an idea to work together with Maximus to find his guard, using her tracker. Because everyone was currently searching for Dr. Quintus's head, Maximus could bring it back, and in return, Lucy asked the Brotherhood of Steel to lend some knights to help her father, who was now held captive by Moldaver, the leader of the Republic of California faction. Upon hearing this, Maximus finally agreed to Lucy's request, while Lucy still unaware that Maximus had lied about being Knight Titus. Shortly after, during their journey, they encountered two strangers. When Maximus and Lucy approached, they realized that the two individuals were Veen, or human eaters. At that moment, Maximus immediately managed to eliminate them using Lucy's rifle, although Maximus also got hit by one of their shots. After traveling a considerable distance, they finally arrived at the new capital of the Republic of California, a place that was supposed to be the starting point for a new civilization for the bunker dwellers. However, Lucy was surprised because the place was far from suitable, having been hit by the nuclear bomb explosion 20 years ago, where Maximus was one of the survivors of that incident. After seeing the gunshot wound on Maximus's arm, they decided to stop by one of the abandoned laboratories belonging to Vault-Tec Corporation to look for remnants of medicine. But once inside, they suddenly fell into a trap. After waking up, Lucy realized that she was now inside bunker number 04. Lucy then explained to the residents of bunker 04 that she came from bunker 33. After hearing this, both of them immediately received some treatment to heal their wounds. Not only that, Maximus, who incidentally came from the surface, also received the same treatment as Lucy, something that Maximus would never get if he had entered bunker 33 or 32, which were strongly against outsiders. At that moment, Lucy felt something strange because Harper, the officer who welcomed her, admitted that she was born in the upper world. According to Lucy's knowledge, bunkers were created to protect them from the surface world, not to heal or care for refugees from outside. Shortly after, while they both ate in the cafeteria, Lucy also saw some residents of bunker 04 who looked more like mutants than humans. Even the leader of bunker 04 had only one eye in the middle, but this seemed normal to Maximus, who indeed came from the surface. Curious, Lucy then went to meet that person to dig deeper for information. After some conversation, Lucy finally learned that the leader had been inside the bunker for 5 generations. This confirmed that their ancestors were indeed the original inhabitants of the bunker. It turns out, each bunker had its own ideology. Unlike bunker 33 where Lucy came from, bunker 04 was very open to residents from the surface world, and they had been accepting such people since the time of their ancestors. After this meeting, Lucy, who was touring around, was invited to participate in a traditional event of bunker 04, which turned out to be a kind of worship ritual for their ancestors and their leader. Moldaver was the person Lucy had been searching for all this time. Feeling something amiss, Lucy hurriedly went to find Maximus, who was actually enjoying the facilities in his room. At that moment, Lucy immediately asked Maximus to leave the place with her. However, Maximus was already too comfortable with the amenities he had never experienced on the surface. Maximus refused Lucy's invitation and instead thought she was overthinking things. In the end, Lucy intended to prove her worries by investigating the place alone. Not long after, Lucy arrived at floor 12, where the area was forbidden, and there she found something strange. Initially, Lucy saw an old recording showing a woman as a research subject giving birth to dozens of fish. But the fish ended up devouring the woman immediately after they were born. Not only that, Lucy also found dozens of active experimental tubes stored in the room. Unfortunately, before Lucy could inspect the contents of the tubes, her actions were discovered by one of the doctors, who then immediately called the guards to capture her. Returning to Cooper, who had just regained consciousness and was approached by several sheriffs after previously being unconscious due to excessive drug use at the organ dealer's headquarters. At that moment, Cooper was immediately arrested and taken to meet their leader, who claimed to be the government in the area. But their leader turned out to be an old acquaintance of Cooper. Initially, the man intended to execute Cooper for causing trouble in their territory. But due to their lack of experience, the sheriffs were easily killed by Cooper. Before leaving the place, Cooper asked about a poster of a woman he saw there, whom his acquaintance claimed was Moldever. After that, Cooper recalled his past before the nuclear war. At that time, Cooper was employed as an advertising star for Vault-Tec, where his wife also worked there. They once held a celebration party at their home after Vault-Tec obtained permission from the American government to build anti-nuclear bunkers. Although Cooper was somewhat reluctant because he was essentially a pacifist or someone who was anti-war. However, Vault-Tec was the office where his wife worked, so Cooper reluctantly agreed to hold the party. At that time, one of his colleagues seemed to disagree with Cooper's decision, which seemed to support the Vault-Tec company. Shortly after, Cooper went to meet his colleague at a bar, where his colleague gave him a secret meeting invitation and asked Cooper to come there to see how corrupt the company where his wife worked was. Curious, Cooper then decided to accept his colleague's invitation, where he met Moldever and members of her group, who later became the forerunners of the new California Republic faction, whose members consisted of surface dwellers including raiders and ghouls. In that meeting, Moldever initiated the conversation provocatively, where Moldever said that in a region where merchants were more powerful than its law enforcers, the merchants could buy the law enforcers, so they would work together to sell their products with the threat of nuclear war. And this situation will surely lead to a surge in sales of Vault-Tec underground bunkers. At the same time, Moldever had found a fusion core, where the object could provide power for hundreds of years, but all the legalities and even the company where she worked were immediately bought out by the Vault-Tec company. However, Cooper did not trust Moldever and decided to leave. Unexpectedly, Moldever followed him and suspected that Cooper's wife might currently be planning something big with some wealthy people. And to ensure that, Moldever gave Cooper a sort of bug to spy on his wife, to prove her words. At first, Cooper considered discarding the bug because he felt it would be betraying his wife. But after some thought, Cooper eventually retrieved the bug. Returning to the present, after Cooper had previously eliminated several sheriffs, Cooper then continued his journey until he reached a house belonging to a young man suspected of knowing Moldever's whereabouts. After being forced by his parents, who knew that Cooper was dangerous, the young man answered that Moldever might currently be at the observatory or an observatory-like place made to look like a fortress. Upon knowing this, Cooper intended to hurry to the mentioned place, but because the young man attempted to shoot him, Cooper had to eliminate him first. Meanwhile, in Bunker 04, Lucy was facing a trial held by the Overseer for breaking the rules by entering a restricted area and attacking a resident. During the trial, Lucy, who had seen a recording showing a female research subject earlier, raised questions about it. After that, the Overseer's assistant played the full recording. In the end, the recording showed a salamander monster that had attacked Lucy and devouring Dr. Quinta's head. It became clear that the recording depicted a failed experiment conducted by a scientist from the bunker's residence. They were trying to create superhumans resistant to nuclear radiation by mixing chromosomes from trapped surface humans with animals. However, the project failed, resulting in the deaths of most of the original inhabitants, leaving behind only the experiment's victims. This was the main reason why the bunker inhabitants had unusual appearances. On the contrary, the inhabitants of Bunker 04 were also surprised to hear that there had never been experiments like the ones they mentioned earlier in Bunker 33, where Lucy came from. After that, Lucy was punished by the authorities of Bunker 04 for causing trouble there. But instead of being punished by decapitation, Lucy was only sentenced to be expelled from Bunker 04 and returned to the surface. Maximus, who believed Lucy was in danger, took the fusion core from the bunker for his T-60 power armor. He quickly went to rescue Lucy by causing chaos at the site. Fortunately, Lucy managed to stop Maximus in time by telling him that she had already been released. Shortly after, They exited together from Bunker 04 and continued their journey to find Dr. Quintus's head. Once outside, Lucy asked Maximus to return the fusion core he had previously stolen because it was the energy source for the entire bunker. If it was removed, their energy reserves would not last for more than 3 days. Sometime later, from this journey, they grew closer to each other, and eventually Maximus confessed that he was not Knight Titus and had been lying all along after the original Knight Titus died. But instead of being disappointed by Maximus's, Lucy invited Maximus to live with her in Bunker 33 after Lucy saved her father. Elsewhere, Maximus's guard was seen limping due to injuries from being trampled by the T-60 power armor. During his journey, he encountered someone claiming to be a doctor and offering to help treat his injured leg. Although the doctor appeared weak from lack of food, he had a serum that was said to heal the guard's leg instantly. After his leg wound healed, the man continued his journey towards the nearest radio transmitter to inform headquarters that he had obtained Dr. Quintus' head that they were looking for. Upon reaching the transmitter and making contact with headquarters, instead of a helicopter, Maximus and Lucy arrived with the intention of retrieving Dr. Quintus's head. Unexpectedly, the guard fell into a trap and was struck by an arrow in the neck. Strangely, the injury didn't seem to hurt him. Instead, it quickly healed. Upon seeing this, Maximus immediately confirmed that his guard had taken a ghoul serum, which would turn him into a ghoul soon. Not long after, help from the Brotherhood of Steel headquarters finally arrived. The guard, realizing that he had become a ghoul and would be eliminated if headquarters found out, then handed Dr. Quintus's head to Maximus, while he immediately flees. Taking advantage of that moment, Maximus then took another person's head to be forged and brought to the headquarters, while Dr. Quintus's real head would be handed over to Lucy, which would later be used as leverage to save her father. Meanwhile, in Bunker 33, there was trouble when Betty found prisoners who suddenly died from being poisoned in their food. Despite knowing that Norm was the food courier, Betty wisely decided to professionally investigate the mastermind behind the incident. Not long after, the results of the previously announced relocation finally occurred, where everyone had received their respective place. After that, the supervisors of Bunker 33 congratulated those who were chosen to start a new life. On the other hand, Betty once again appointed a woman from Bunker 31 to be the supervisor in Bunker 32. And with that, they officially parted ways and would forever live in their designated bunkers. At the same time, Norm, who remained in Bunker 33, immediately went to the supervisor's room and secretly contacted the leader of Bunker 31. At that moment, Norm requested access to enter Bunker 31, and to his surprise, the response from the supervisor of Bunker 31 seemed to have a hidden message, as if Betty had been keeping something secret from everyone. From that conversation, Norm finally convinced the Bunker 31 supervisor to allow him to enter the bunker. The scene shifts back to Cooper's past memories after his encounter with Moldever. At that time, Cooper finally decided to secretly tap into his wife's Vault-Tec bracelet to prove Moldever's earlier statements. From his eavesdropping, Cooper finally discovered that Vault-Tec, including his wife, was planning something beyond comprehension. At that time, Vault-Tec was holding an important meeting with several executives from large corporations to plan the construction of hundreds of bunkers to be scattered across America, where Vault-Tec offered each company the opportunity to collaborate and invest their funds in Vault-Tec, in return for exclusive rights to manage their own bunkers. At that moment, marked the beginning of the creation of insane ideas that would later become themes for various bunkers elsewhere, as an expression of their whims, such as the creation of robotic organs, selecting humans by filling the bunkers only with highly intelligent people, to the development of hybrid soldiers to be conducted within their respective bunkers, without the knowledge of other communities. They were starting to feel almost like gods within their own bunkers. However, the war was nearing its end, and it was possible that a peace agreement between nations would soon be made, making it futile for them to build underground bunkers. To avoid this, they planned to orchestrate doomsday by dropping their own nuclear bombs, without waiting for an actual nuclear war to occur. Returning to the present, Norm, who had finally managed to enter Bunker 31, found something completely surprising: that the supervisor there was a robot with a human brain inside. The robot turned out to be one of the executives of Vault-Tec, who now operated all of Bunker 31 alone. Essentially, Bunker 31 turned out to be a kind of storage facility to preserve the bodies of all the management executives of Vault-Tec in coffins. and one by one, they would be awakened to perform the task of ensuring that the inhabitants of Bunker 32 and 33 became superior humans, according to the company's criteria. Upon knowing this, Norm finally learned that his father, Betty, and several others from Bunker 31 were actually people from Vault-Tec who deliberately created a nuclear disaster to wipe out all human life on the surface and create a new civilization with the humans resulting from their experiments. After Norm learned all those secrets, the supervisor of Bunker 31 decided to confine Norm there and ask him to sleep in his father's coffin so that Norm wouldn't disrupt Vault-Tec's plan. On the other hand, Lucy, who had previously parted ways with Maximus, finally reached the location where Moldever was, which was also the headquarters of the new California Republic. At that moment, Lucy immediately brought before Moldever to hand over the head of Dr. Quintus. Once Moldever obtained the nuclear fusion implanted in Dr. Quintus's neck, Lucy asked her to release her father and let them go home. But before Moldever granted Lucy's request, Moldever first informed her that her father was not actually an inhabitant of the bunker, but one of the executives at Vault-Tec responsible for the current world chaos. Not only that, Moldever turned out to be acquainted with Lucy's mother, who had fled from the bunker upon learning her father's true identity. Moldever then recounted how Lucy's mother had attempted to escape from the bunker with Lucy and Norm, but her father had refused to let her and insisted she return. However, Lucy's mom had refused, so her father decided to take Lucy and Norm with him while bombing the entire city to the ground, the same city where Maximus originated. As a result of the incident, many people, including Lucy's mother herself, became victims and turned into ghouls due to radiation exposure. Several years after the incident, Moldever and her members attempted to rebuild the city using Dr. Quintus's cold fusion core. Unlike conventional fusion cores used for bunkers and T-60 armor, the cold fusion core was produced when researchers managed to unite atomic nuclei at lower temperatures. Essentially, cold fusion generated less waste and could provide energy to the entire city indefinitely. However, there was a problem as Moldever needed access codes from one of Vault-Tec's executives to activate it, which was why Moldever had captured Lucy's father. After hearing this, Lucy, filled with disappointment, then asked her father to give his access code to Moldever so he could redeem himself for his past mistakes. At the same time, Maximus, who had been picked up earlier, finally arrived at the headquarters of the Brotherhood of Steel. It didn't take long for the leader of the faction to realize that Maximus was carrying a fake head. But instead of punishing him, the man once again manipulated Maximus by reigniting his desire to become one of the Knight Titus, even becoming the commander of the T-60 Knight forces, if he succeeded in obtaining Dr. Quintus's head. Unable to resist the offer, Maximus finally agreed, and the Brotherhood of Steel faction immediately deployed all its troops to attack the headquarters of the new California Republic. Not long after, the battle between the two major factions finally erupted, where both factions were actually just trying to defend their respective ideologies in order to create an ideal new civilization. Unfortunately, to achieve this, they had to fight each other, causing many casualties to fall. During the war, Cooper secretly infiltrated there as well, to seek revenge against Vault-Tec. Although alone, Cooper was still able to defeat several Knight Titus with T-60 armor, until their forces were cornered. Meanwhile, Maximus, who went there to find Lucy, finally reached the upper floor and met Lucy. But Lucy's condition was still shaken, so her father asked Maximus to unlock his restraints, but Lucy didn't realize it. In the end, Lucy's father managed to obtain AT-60 armor and beat Maximus until he lost consciousness. Shortly after, Cooper also arrived at the scene. Upon seeing Lucy's father, Cooper immediately recognized him as his wife's former colleague at Vault-Tec. But instead of finishing him off, Cooper let Lucy's father leave, believing it would be easier to track him down later than to force him to talk. At that moment, Cooper was confident that after all this, Lucy's father would surely report this incident to someone higher up, who was actually Cooper's target. After that, Cooper gave Lucy the choice to join him and seek revenge against those responsible for the current state of the Earth, or to stay there and wait for the people from the Brotherhood of Steel faction to come and arrest her. In the end, Lucy finally chose to join Cooper to avenge their actions against her mom. But before that, Lucy decided to shoot the ghoul who was her own mother to end her suffering. After Cooper and Lucy left, Maximus, who had previously passed out from being beaten by Lucy's father while wearing T-60 armor, finally began to regain consciousness. At the same time, Moldever also appeared at the scene in critical condition. Maximus, who knew the real facts, chose to remain silent and let Moldever blame the fusion core that had previously been activated by Lucy's father. At that moment, Maximus witnessed history with his own eyes, where after 200 years, electricity finally lit up and illuminated the entire city. Unfortunately, Moldever, who was in critical condition, couldn't survive and died after fighting to defend her ideology from the attacks of the Brotherhood of Steel faction. Maximus, who happened to be beside her at that moment, unintentionally became a hero because everyone thought Maximus had successfully defeated the leader of the New California Republic faction. And the story come to an end. Moral lesson from the story: if you're ever unsure about joining a party in a creepy underground bunker, just remember, sometimes it's better to stay above ground and enjoy the sunshine than risk ending up in a coffin with your name on it.